as Nigeria re-emphasizes its commitment to creating special economic zones in a bid to double manufacturing and improve the nation's economic outcomes. The Oil and Gas Free Zones Authority, the regulator of the oil and gas free zones in Nigeria, takes stock of its economic contributions to the country.
From inception, we're talking about over $20 billion of investments that the free zones have attracted in the oil and gas sector, and over 150,000 direct and indirect jobs created within the free zones. And then, of course, all of that certainly would go with transfer of skills and technology. So these are tangible benefits that you can say have accrued to the country over time with the deployment of the free zones strategy.
In our history, the oil and gas free zones, we have contributed roughly $20 billion to Nigeria's economy, give or take, right? We know that. We know, again, that the oil and gas free zones have, over the course of our work, added about 200,000 employment to Nigeria. We know that. These are data you can't dispute. So that's a given. That's what we've done and achieved so far. How do I see us going? What's our integration with Nigeria's economy? I think it's very promising. Investment isn't tribal or national. Money follows where money will profit.
I think free zones are usually attractive options to FDIs, and to the extent that it has the incentives that it provides, it has the potential to bring in investors. And when you're thinking of industrialization and you're thinking of growing the economy, I think it's a viable option to go. And as the MD has said, it's actually seen that contribution over the years.
The OGFZA and private sector observers agree that attracting investments is strongly tied to connecting value chains as viable investment attraction strategies.
You must offer something, you must put something on the table, because it's all about competitiveness. Yeah. Why would they come here and not go elsewhere? And that is where I believe our free zones would come in, and the authority comes in. Because one key incentive that we offer for the foreign investors is the fact that they can repatriate their capital, they can repatriate profits, 100% dividends, and the central bank, they have special arrangements for the free zones, which makes this possible. Yeah. Because the foreign investors usually would ask if I bring my money in, how do I take it out? How do I take my profits and so on? Yeah. And the free zone adequately answers that question.
Absolutely.
So I believe that is key. And talking about the value chain, I believe that the free zone can be situated within the spectrum.
Yeah. I mean, the point really is everyone really is looking for opportunity to maximize returns for investors, definitely whether local or domestic or international. That's certain. But to have this quantum leap we're expecting in terms of stimulating growth in the economy. I think you also need to think a little more beyond, the domestic. Yeah, definitely we have the investors here. We need to educate them and let them know the incentives available because of the share, incentives that it attracts. Yes, it's possible. But again, you need to link the value chain to that point where you actually think beyond the upstream, the midstream, and downstream side.
To accelerate the expected leap and fast-track economic growth of licensees within its cover, the OGFZA says it had to form strategic partnerships. The regulator also talks about its plans for the future to help businesses grow.
We've entered a strategic relationship with COO I mean, again, they're a huge energy brand. To develop energy infrastructure across our zones, this is useful and necessary because what it does is it reduces the business worries about power to our zone enterprises. They say the highest cost of business usually is power and then it's labor. So if I remove your power worries as an investor, what that then does mean is I can focus on just running your business because I'm providing you power utilities, okay? That takes care of that. In recent years, last year and the year before, for 2 years running, the FDI magazine of the Financial Times in London gave us 2 prizes. Free Zone Award, Free Zone of the Year, and Incentives of the Year. Again, you don't buy that from the market. That's because of the work we have done. So that also tells me that we've started really strong, but we've also put things in place to take us further. Fourth thing to consider is that PwC recently, last year, in their grading of agencies of government in Nigeria, graded us the first among 44 government agencies in our Ease of Doing Business Index. Again, that speaks to the work we are doing in this administration under this leadership to make sure that industries and enterprises under our care are properly and professionally managed and regulated. We've rolled out operations on Oracle platform, and so we're integrating our systems, making our systems more efficient and more streamlined. It helps business processes go faster and they're more effective. Nigeria is not only ready for business, but the Oil and Gas Free Zones Authority is a trustworthy partner to manage your oil and gas assets.
In terms of the investments that are coming in, I think it's about what they're doing right now, prioritizing, and so you're actually looking at which ones would be most attractive in terms of, developments across, those zones, infrastructure, and all the planned developments that are going on, even the ones that are there currently. And it's actually to bring a lot more involvement, of some of these initiatives and ensuring that it becomes even more attractive. So I think that with the focus on industrialization, focus on growing the economy, it would continue to be that viable option.
I believe that the zones have been veritable tools to drive industrialization. Because some of the companies who come in there to set up shop, they produce, like in Durama, they produce for exports and for the local markets, for the domestic markets. And then we have other companies like FMC, Tenaris. They produce specialized equipment to support the operations of the industry. And before the free zone platform was provided with the incentives that attracted the level of investments that we're witnessing. Some of those equipment, specialized equipment, like the Christmas tree, that is very important in the industry, you see, was fabricated, produced 100% outside, and there was no local content. Now we have companies who are based within the free zone, and it's all produced 100% with the corresponding benefits. So as a strategy to drive industrialization, I believe that is not in doubt. And some of the most successful free zones around the world, like the Jebel Ali free zone in Dubai with over 5,000 companies, accounts for that single free zone up to 40% of the GDP. So I believe the country should look at the strategy of deploying the free zones seriously to drive industrialization. And yes, we concentrate on the oil and gas sector, but we also have other free zones that are not focusing on oil and gas, other special economic zones under the jurisdiction of the Nigerian Export Processing Zones Authority. So there's still that balance, and I believe that if the zones are properly developed And then that partnership between the private sector and the public sector is deepened, and then we can then create a world-class free zone. Is to deepen investments in the ones that we have, and then look at how we can maybe create a few new ones to attract additional FDIs. Right.
For these stakeholders, Nigeria's focus on industrialization, diversification, and commitment to creating an enabling environment for businesses along the value chain will continue to make oil and gas-free zones viable options and veritable tools for general economic growth.
For us as the regulator of the oil and gas free zones, for as long as there's oil and gas assets to manage, our job is to regulate and manage efficiently and effectively, to make sure we create a level playing field and create an enabling environment so businesses along the value chain prosper. The future is bright. And until we're completely weaned of oil and gas, there's plenty of work for the regulator to do in the sector to make sure that the sector is efficiently regulated and managed.
We need cooperation and collaboration, working with other agencies of government. The free zone is a one-stop shop facility where all the problems can be solved within the free zone. You don't need to go outside to get customs approvals, to get immigration approvals. Everything, the authority would ensure that the investors, whatever their needs are in relation to customs, to immigration, all those needs are catered for within the free zone.
I think free zones, for one, would be a good haven for investors. And as long as we continue to push for economic development, diversification, maybe not just oil and gas, because again, there's an ecosystem created around even oil and gas free zones, so oil services and related ancillary service providers. A lot more can be created within those free zones. So again, it's actually opening up the economy to investments, both foreign and domestic. And I think that as long as we continue to push this economic recovery, growth and recovery agenda, I think that free trade zone would be one of the most viable, alternatives and options, at least, for investors to want to look at.